at the behest of their caucus, but that is a process by which you can frequently do things or start things that maybe you couldn't get the bill passed. Like you had a bill to do something, and when the bill doesn't advance, you start lobbying to have a proviso put in the budget to, So if you wanted to, just to take a sort of fanciful example, like you wanted to study the availability of youth baseball fields in Washington or something like that, and your bill to do that dies, but you go to the budget chairs and say, hey, can we have $500,000 to study the availability of youth baseball facilities, and if they agreed, then they can put it in the budget and it'll happen. It's part of the tension between the executive and the legislative branches, definitely. I mean, the executive branch typically would prefer, yes, you just give us all the money and let us decide how to spend it under the existing law.
I think agencies in general would prefer fewer provisos. There may be some very specific projects that they want to do, and they'd like to have it called out in a proviso. But I think generally, if you look at a governor's budget proposal to the legislature, there are much fewer provisos in the budget than you'll see in a final budget passed by the legislature.
Budget provisos are a thing that's the sort of thing that the governor can veto out of the budget if he wants to.
Provisos may seem as a way to circumvent the lawmaking process, but keep in mind the budget only lasts for the 2-year biennium, whereas policy bills, when passed, become enshrined in law forever, assuming they get funded in the budget.
As you know, the House and the Senate have both passed their budgets, and I want to start by saying how much I appreciate the hard work of both the House and the Senate. There are good ideas in both budgets, and I'll speak more about those good ideas a bit later. I also appreciate the many productive conversations I've been having with leadership on both sides of the aisle, and those conversations will, of course, continue.
Like any other piece of legislation, it is referred to a committee, it gets public hearings, it then goes through the committee process of getting voted out of committee, and eventually will go to the floor of each body to be considered by the full body. If they are not perfectly the same on both sides, then they go into a budget conference and they hammer out their differences until they've come to an agreement on everything in the bill.
Neither budget, however, is close to one that I can sign for 2 key reasons. First, they each propose.
The Senate and the House have both rolled out competing budgets and kind of competing tax plans to pay for them, although the tax plans are pretty similar. And that process usually leads to a conference committee where essentially the House and the budget hash out a compromise.
We would much prefer that this not go to conference, where it's going to be just a few legislators in a back room rewriting the budget and then coming out with a proposal that we don't have a chance to amend, you haven't had a chance to comment on, and all we get to do is vote up or down, yes or no.
When I hear negotiating in the dark of night, in a closed room with no one, we are duly elected public officials. We represent our districts, and then we're voted in by our colleagues to have different positions of leadership as fiscal chairs like myself and in other positions. But that said, when we do our negotiations, we do it in the people's house in the light of day. The people's house with lights that are kept on by the people's money. And so I never think of myself being in a dark room by myself. I know the people of Washington are with me. I know they are because they put me here.
Once the House and Senate have emerged from conference with the same bill, the budget will have reached the final step of the budgetary process and head to the governor's desk.
Sound check for the Zoom audience. If you can give me a thumbs up or something in the chat to let me know you can hear us.
Then it becomes law. And it's interesting that the governor's threat on Tuesday was not a specific veto threat, but he said, I would not sign, which kind of raises the question of, would he just let it become law without his signature? I mean, that seems unlikely, but it's not outside the realm of possibility.
We're going to be mindful, but we're also going to be a co-equal branch of government, that we're going to have a conversation and see what we come up with. And hopefully at the end of the day, we'll have something that he can say yes to. Getting to yes is the goal.
All right, everybody, we're going to get started now. Thank you all for coming. My name is Andrew Winnicky. I'm with the Washington Department of Ecology. We're going to discuss some serious water supply and drought issues facing the state this summer. And to kick things off, I want to have Ecology's director, Casey Sixkiller, come up. Casey.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Casey Sixkiller, the director of the Department of Ecology. I'm delighted today to be joined by several key partners. Karen Bumbucco, Deputy State Climatologist, our Commissioner for Public Lands, Dave Upthegrove, the Drought Lead for the Washington Department of Agriculture, Jackie Hancock, and from the Department of Health, Assistant Secretary Lauren Jenks. Thank you all for being here. 1 year ago, we announced an unprecedented third year of drought, primarily affecting the Yakima Basin, as well as other parts of the state. Today, we are gathered again, but to declare a drought emergency for the fourth year in a row, and this time it is statewide. Under state law, we declare drought when water supply drops below 75% of normal and creates hardships for people, farms, or the environment. This year, every watershed in our state has met that threshold. Declaring a drought emergency today allows us to act immediately to provide funding, support water users facing shortages, and coordinate closely with local and state partners. While this is now a statewide declaration, it was important for us to be here in Yakima to announce it. This is where the impacts are felt first and most acutely by farmers, irrigators, the Yakima Nation, and communities whose livelihoods depend on the water necessary to support our agricultural economy. This basin has also served as an example of the power of partnership and collaboration in managing the basin's water and advancing projects to strengthen the resiliency of that water supply into the future. And yet, despite those efforts and their successes, last fall it was the first basin in our state to run out of water. There's no way to sugarcoat what is happening today. We have entered April with roughly half of our normal snowpack. In Washington, our summer water supply is stored in winter snowpack. It melts gradually, feeding rivers, filling reservoirs, and keeping water temperatures cool. This year, that system is coming up short. You can see it as you cross over the Cascades on I-90. The reservoirs are full, storing every drop of water they can, but the hillsides are bare. April 1st is typically when snowpack peaks. This year, we are at just 52% of normal, and that gap has real consequences. To put it in perspective, the Yakima Basin reservoirs can store about 1 million acre-feet of water, but communities, farms, and fish need about 2.5 million acre-feet of water each summer. Even in a well-managed system like Yakima, storage alone is not enough. We need a healthy snowpack. Here and elsewhere across our state, water supplies were built around snowpack. And after 4 years, we're now seeing that this is no longer a reliable resource. Water managers here in Yakima Basin are being forced to do two things: support a $4 billion agricultural economy and maintain stream flows that fish need to survive. That means difficult decisions that affect crops, jobs, and entire communities. After 4 consecutive years of drought, that pressure is significant. and the outlook doesn't look much better. Forecasts point to a warmer, drier than normal conditions through early summer and little improvements beyond that. That's why early action matters. Every week counts in how we prepare and respond. Over the past decade, we've declared drought 7 out of 10 years. Drought is becoming the pattern, our new normal. And now climate change is reshaping our water system in real time. More rain, less snow, earlier runoff, hotter, drier summers. In short, not enough water when we need it, and too much when we can't store it. And this isn't just a concern for the Yakima Basin or only for eastern Washington. By the end of this century, the Nooksack watershed in Whatcom County is expected to see a 45% increase in wintertime stream flows and an equivalent 45% decrease in summertime stream flows. Out on the Olympic Peninsula, the Elliwatt Dungeness watershed is projected to see a 20 to 40% decline in late summer stream flow within the next 20 years. I want to close with where I started. Today, we are declaring a statewide drought emergency. The impacts of this drought will affect parts of our state differently. If you live in Seattle, like I do, or Tacoma, Everett, your utilities are not projecting any disruption to their water support or supply or impacts to residents. But let me be clear. We are all in this together. Water is life. It is a precious resource, and we all have a role in protecting it. This drought declaration unlocks important tools to help manage water supplies. But there is more work to do to protect our communities and invest in their future. I grew up spending a lot of time here in Yakima with my family, and I can tell you there is nothing quite like an apple fresh off the tree. We need to act now so that future generations, my grandkids, your grandkids, can have that same experience, so that salmon still run, so that farms and forests remain a vital part of who we are as a state. So whether you live in Seattle, farm in Yakima, or depend on healthy rivers and forests, this connects all of us. We're not standing still. We are investing in water supply, improving efficiency, and building long-term solutions that this moment demands. And we will continue to meet it with urgency. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Karen Bambacco from the Washington State Climate Office for more about what we saw over the last several weeks. Where's Karen? There we are. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Director Sixkiller. The Washington State Climate Office is a part of the University of Washington Climate Impacts Group, and we've been a longtime member of the state's Water Supply Availability Committee. And as a technical advisory member, we put current temperature, precipitation, stream flow, snowpack, soil moisture data in the context of seasonal variations and long-term trends in Washington's climate. Like Director Sixkiller said, our statewide average snowpack was only 52% of median as of last week. That means that on average, we're missing about half of what we would normally have this time of year. The statewide average snowpack ranks as the third lowest since records began in 1985. Of the other snow drought years in Washington, 2005 and 2015 were worse. They were both lower, and 2001 was comparable to this year's drought. I'm sure many of you remember what happened in those years. All of those years were associated with drought impacts across the state, ranging from reduced hydropower to fish mortality to reduced water allocations for agriculture. Our office continues to study the different ways that Washington drought can develop. Warmer than normal temperatures were a critical component of this year's drought, similar to 2005 and 2015. Early in the season, a record warm December brought rain to our highest elevations instead of snow. Then a midwinter dry spell continued with continued warmer than normal temperatures limited our snowpack growth. A series of storms in mid-March did bring some snow, but it was quickly melted by warmer than normal temperatures afterward. Statewide, the water year average temperature ranks as the third warmest since records began in 1895, and I'm not misspeaking, 1895. Last year's drought was mostly due to low precipitation. This year, we've had near normal to above normal precipitation for the water year, but warmer than normal temperatures led to low snowpack. This year's drought is exactly what we expect to see more of in the future. At this point, we can't yet say exactly how much long-term warming contributed to this year's drought. Studies will begin to shed light on that in the future. What we do know is that our climate today is warmer than it used to be, and that warming likely played some role in this year's lack of snowpack. Regardless of the cause this year, snow droughts will become more common in the future. For example, in the past, snow droughts occurred about twice a decade on average. Today, they happen about 4 times per decade on average. By the 2050s, models estimate that snow droughts in Washington will occur about 7 years per decade on average. For this year's drought, we aren't 100% sure how spring and summer will play out, but the latest seasonal forecasts give higher odds for above normal temperatures and below normal precipitation statewide. That, in combination with today's low snowpack, means that parts of the state will experience major water supply issues this summer. As you've heard from Director Sixkiller, declaring drought now in April allows for more time to prepare. This year's drought is also an opportunity to prepare for the future. What we learn this time around can increase our readiness for future droughts that we know are coming. Thank you for your time today. And next up, we have the Commissioner of Public Lands, Dave Upthegrove.
Thanks. Good morning. I guess it's still good morning. My name is Dave Upthegrove, Washington State's elected Commissioner of Public Lands. In this role, I serve as Director of the State Department of Natural Resources, the agency that has responsibility for wildfire prevention and response throughout the state of Washington. 4 straight years of drought means we're at a higher risk of wildfires this summer. Fires will be more prone to start and will spread faster. It's also clear that a changing climate is really driving a forest health crisis that's driving this wildfire crisis. And fortunately, this last year, just weeks ago, the legislature fully restored our funding for wildfire prevention and forest health. That was our agency's top priority. I spent a year traveling the state making the case to legislators, and this is critical funding. As a result, the Department of Natural Resources is able to continue our work, not only positioning fire equipment and being prepared to put out the fires, but we have the funding needed to invest in forest health, in fuels reduction, and the thinning work needed to help reduce the risk that only increases because of these drought conditions. It's also important to recognize that in Washington state, more than 90% of the wildfires are human-caused. So in drought conditions like this, it's more important than ever that Washington state residents follow the rules as it relates to burning on your property. It means being careful and safe with campfires and fireworks and motorized vehicles on dry areas. I like to quote Smokey Bear, only you can prevent forest fires. Everyone in Washington has a role to play in these dry conditions to help reduce that risk. We appreciate the Department of Ecology's leadership in bringing together the state family of agencies that work in a collaborative way, not only to avoid but mitigate risks, including wildfire. But let me be clear, 4 years in a row of drought means higher wildfire risks. Fires will be more prone to start and will spread more quickly. But we're prepared to invest in the forest health and that preventive work and work with the community to make sure that we stay safe even in these dry times. It's my pleasure to introduce Jackie Hancock from the Department of Agriculture. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Upthegrove. My name is Jackie Hancock. I'm a water resources scientist for the State Department of Agriculture. First, I want to thank Department of Ecology's Director Sixkiller for inviting us to participate in today's event. WSDA supports Ecology's statewide drought declaration. We're closely monitoring conditions as we head into this year's growing season. In years with similar conditions, we've seen irrigation challenges lead to impacts in crop yield and crop quality, and that's something we're keeping a close eye on again this year, although it is too early for us to speak specifically to 2026 impacts yet. While we expect water shortages to be felt across different regions and different cropping systems, we're paying particular attention to places that we know are vulnerable to drought. That includes the Yakima Basin, where we are today, that faces its 4th consecutive drought year in a row. Multi-year drought events compound challenges to agriculture. An example of that is in tree fruit production. If we have water stress in the fall, that's going to lead to impacts to the harvest in the following season. Our partners at Washington State University are working to better understand the impacts of back-to-back droughts on agricultural production, and they have a report coming this summer to outline some of those results. And as Karen and others have mentioned, this year's predicted warmer than normal temperatures can also increase water demand. That's going to further add to the challenges in managing water supplies for agriculture and for other water users. And at the same time, we recognize that this comes as the agriculture sector is navigating broad market pressures. In some areas, we do anticipate economic impacts tied to limitations in irrigation water supply. That's particularly the case in areas with water pro-rationing and water rights curtailments. And WSDA is continuing to refine our drought assessment tools so that we can better understand that by providing economic impact assessments of drought events to the agricultural sector. And that work is critical for us to be able to inform resilience-based planning and to support the integrated water management solutions like those that are a part of the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. As WSDA continues to evaluate all of the challenges that are impacting agricultural viability in Washington State, water availability concerns remain prominent. Our final agricultural viability report, which is expected to be released this summer, is going to outline challenges related to water availability and how we can work together as a team to target drought resiliency and improve that for both agriculture and other in-stream and out-of-stream water users. Investing in resilient agricultural practices and more adaptive and strategic water management solutions is going to help Washington to better withstand future droughts and to protect our communities, our farms, and our ecosystems. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Department of Health's Lauren Jenks.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm Lauren Jenks. I'm Assistant Secretary for the Washington State Department of Health. And friends, what we have just heard are threats to our water, our food, our air, our economy, everything that we need to be healthy. And you've also heard that our state agencies are working together to make the state as resilient as possible to these impacts. But there remains a role for us. We see this drought right now. We're in drought right now. We need to be conserving our water so that we're using only the water that we need, so that we have the water that we need going into the summer. We heard that we're at risk for more wildfires. That means more smoke. There's no amount of smoke that's good for anybody to breathe. This is the time to be prepared to survive a smoky summer. So if you've got somebody in your family who's particularly sensitive to smoke, you'll want to think about how do we provide an indoor area that we know we can keep the indoor air quality really good. Maybe we need to purchase air purifiers or maybe fans and filters. Today's the day to get those before we have lower supplies of them as we get to the summer. And the way that we become most resilient to the impacts of climate change is through strong community. So get to know your neighbors, know who it is you live around, know who may be more vulnerable and may need help if if they have a lack of food or if there's too much smoke. That's how it's our communities that will keep us safe as the climate continues to change. Thank you. I think I'll turn it back to Andy.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We'll move on to the question and answer portion. In addition to our speakers here today, we have a few other folks here ready to answer questions if you want to direct anything towards them, so I'll introduce them very quickly. Rhea Burns, who is the manager of Ecology's Water Resources Program. Larry Matson, who is the director of Ecology's Office of Columbia River. Scott Ravel with the Rosa Irrigation District. Holly Myers, who is the director of the Department of Health's Office of Drinking Water, and Joe Blodgett with the Yakama Nation. So thank you all for being here today. We have some people online as well, but if there are some questions in the room, we could start with those. Do you want to?
I got a couple.
Yes.
Okay. One is from John Adams at KGW. As long-term snowpack in the Pacific Northwest continues to decline, is there anything we can do legislatively to help mitigate the effects, or do communities need to be prepared to change how we live and adapt to this new normal?
Just to repeat that, are there legislative solutions to some of these long-term water supply challenges that we have? Casey.
Thanks for that question. The question was about legislative solutions. What we're doing, we're in a very active conversation with Governor Ferguson now, looking at not just what we're about to experience over the summer, but looking to the future based on the projections that we're hearing from our partners at the University of Washington and others, and exploring what the future looks like from water supply, water infrastructure, and other ways that we can ensure that folks have access not just to irrigated ag, but also all the other parts of our life that depend on water, whether that's our drinking water supplies or other surface water needs. So the answer to your question is, I think we're too early to tell on what legislative solutions or proposals the governor may come forward with, but we're in an active conversation now about that, and I think we'll have more to talk about here in the near future.
Mr. Sixkiller, Anna King, Public Radio. I just wanted to ask, this is the 4th year of drought that we're encountering. What has the state learned in the previous decades that we've experienced droughts that have come, and what will be different this year? What new money or what new measures will you institute this year?
Well, one of the things, I'm going to start it and then I might pass it off to one of my colleagues, is as Karen said, we are really living in an unprecedented moment here of back-to-back-to-back drought declarations. I think one of the things that we've learned, obviously, is being able to do things like we're doing today and to making that declaration earlier in the year to give water managers more time to make the decisions that they need to make, as difficult as they may be, to be working with the irrigated ag community, Yakama Nation, and others. And I am just really thankful for the continued partnership and collaboration of everyone around the table here in the Yakama Basin in particular. I think we're also learning that drought conditions are coming sooner and more often outside of the Yakama Basin. Again, I just do think, driving over the Cascades 2 years ago, we saw more snow. So, one of the other things that we've also found too is that Jackie mentioned from Washington State Department of Ag, right, is the problem compounds itself, right? A year ago we talked about we're already entering the year in a water deficit, and we're never getting to a place where we're replenishing, right, and starting anew. It's just we continue to make less and less progress in making up that for lack of water supply. So I think in some ways the bill has come due, right, and it's time for us to really think long term about what are the tools that we need to be able to manage water going forward. What are the ways in which we're engaging residents across Washington State, whether that's for what all of us can do from a conservation perspective, as well as what our infrastructure looks like. As I said earlier, right, our infrastructure really is geared toward snowpack. If that snowpack is going to become less reliable, what do we do going forward? Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just wonder, in a year where you're going to take a tour shortly of orchards and vineyards that are being ripped out, maybe folks need they need long-term planning, but they also need immediate help. What is the state answering for that?
Do you want to take that? You want to talk about that, Rhea, in terms of what we're unlocking today?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think one of the things that this drought declaration allows us to do is get the unlock tools that are available now, including $3 million in drought response grants. And so folks who are eligible may move forward and apply now to unlock the $3 million that we have available to public entities, to tribal nations, et cetera. One of the other things that we learned from multiple years of drought several years ago is that we need funding available, not necessarily when the legislature is in session, but at the point in time in which a drought is declared. And so in 2023, the legislature amended the drought legislation and passed a bill that at the time of the drought declaration, the money would become unlocked to make $3 million available. We know that's not sufficient to address the hardship across the state, but it is an investment that's important in Yakima and elsewhere, and we appreciate the partnership that we've had with the legislature in the past years to make that remedy available.
Got one from Conrad Swanson, Seattle Times. I know it's early, but I'm curious how likely you all believe it will be that surface water rights will have to be shut off again in the Yakima River Basin like last year.
Sure, I can take that one. As Conrad suggested, it is too early to know whether or not we will have a similar curtailment this year compared to last year, as we issued a widespread surface water curtailment in the Yakima Basin in early October of 2025. What we're doing now is taking all steps to prepare water users reliant on surface water across the Yakima Basin. That includes early communication with water systems that rely on surface water, ensuring that they are implementing conservation measures, looking to prioritize and help folks build mitigation strategies that help them ensure that they have continued access, and also work with our partners in the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan to ensure that we're continuing to advance the projects that are part of the planning process in the Yakima Basin.
Jimmy, do you have other questions?
I don't have any more.
All right. Any others in the room? All right. So I know there was some interest in, we were talking about broad statewide level, in what the specific impacts are and how that really translates into the specific decisions that irrigators, farms, water managers are making. And so we are going to be headed out to one of the Rosa canals in Wapato, about 20 minutes from here, going to Rosa Board President Rick Valikoff's orchards, and a chance to just talk with them about what they will be doing as soon as the next few days in terms of managing their waters for the water supply picture that we now have. So please talk to any of us, and we can get you that address and connect you with that. And if there are no other questions, thank you so much for coming, for joining us today, and we will be providing a lot more updates as we go on with the summer. Thank you.